How could they humiliate a man who had given decades of his life to thankless service? Every day, Harold endured the cutting remarks and deliberate cruelty of a boss who saw him as nothing but an invisible servant. Yet beneath his weathered exterior beat a heart of extraordinary compassion. While Preston demolished spirits, Harold quietly restored them, offering kindness when no one was looking, dignity when others would strip it away. What happens when an invisible man finally sees the truth? Harold never imagined that his humble position would give him the power to change everything. But the tables were about to turn. The fluorescent lights of Preston Financial buzz harshly overhead as Harold Jenkins, a 68-year-old janitor with weathered hands and stooped shoulders, carefully polishes the glass door of the conference room. His reflection reveals deep-set eyes that have witnessed decades of struggle, yet still hold a dignified spark. The morning executive meeting has just ended, and Harold hurries to clean before the next session. His mop accidentally catches the edge of an expensive leather chair, toppling it with a crash that echoes through the now silent room. CEO Richard Preston, a man whose tailored suit costs more than Harold's monthly salary, turns with cold fury in his eyes. "Can't you do anything right, old man?" he barks, loud enough for the departing executives to hear. Harold's weathered face flushes deep crimson as laughter ripples through the group of younger professionals. "Maybe it's time we replaced you with someone who can actually see what they're cleaning," Preston continues, his voice dripping with contempt. The janitor's gnarled fingers tremble as he rights the chair, his eyes fixed on the floor to hide the moisture gathering in them. "I'm sorry, Mr. Preston," he whispers, the words barely audible over the continued snickering. As the executives file out, Preston deliberately knocks over Harold's cleaning cart, sending bottles and rags scattering across the freshly mopped floor. "Clean that up too," he says with a dismissive wave, "and make sure it's done before my next meeting." Harold kneels painfully on aging knees, gathering his supplies while trying to preserve what little dignity remains. In that moment, with his shoulders hunched under the weight of humiliation, he appears smaller than his already modest frame. The last executive leaves without offering help, the door swinging shut on Harold's quiet struggle. Later that afternoon, Harold moves slowly down the hallway, pushing his now reorganized cart with careful precision. His faded blue uniform hangs loosely on his thin frame, a name tag polished to a shine despite years of wear. He pauses outside the break room where Lisa, a young accounting clerk, sits alone with tears streaming down her face. Harold hesitates, then quietly enters, pulling a clean handkerchief from his pocket. "Sometimes the weight we carry isn't visible to others," he offers gently, extending the folded square of fabric. Lisa looks up in surprise, accepting the gesture with trembling hands. "My daughter just called. Mom's cancer is back," she whispers. Harold nods slowly, understanding etched in the lines of his face. "When my Margaret was fighting her battle, we found strength in unexpected places," he shares, his voice soft but steady. He reaches into his cart and produces a small tin of homemade cookies. "My neighbor bakes these, always helps sweeten a bitter day." The simple kindness brings a fresh wave of tears to Lisa's eyes, but these fall differently than before. Harold carefully wipes a coffee spill from her desk without mentioning it, preserving her dignity in a way his own had not been preserved earlier. "Thank you," she manages, clutching the handkerchief. He doesn't rush away, despite the long list of rooms still needing his attention. Instead, he sits briefly in silent solidarity, his presence offering more comfort than any words could. The evening shadows stretch across Preston Financial's lobby as most employees head home. Harold remains, methodically emptying trash bins in the now quiet offices. In the cubicle section, he notices young James, an intern with disheveled hair, frantically searching through a waste basket. "Missing something important?" Harold inquires, approaching slowly to avoid startling the young man. James looks up, desperation clear in his eyes. "I accidentally threw away my flash drive with tomorrow's presentation. Mr. Preston will fire me if I don't have it." The janitor sets down his collection bag and pulls a pair of thin rubber gloves from his pocket. "Let's find it together," he says with quiet determination. For 30 minutes, they sift through coffee grounds, crumpled papers, and food wrappers. Harold's arthritic fingers move with surprising dexterity, carefully examining each discarded item. The overhead lights automatically dim to night mode, casting long shadows across their hunched figures. James's hope visibly fades with each passing minute until Harold holds up a small black rectangle with a triumphant smile. "Is this what you're looking for?" The young intern's face transforms with relief as he clutches the recovered drive. "You just saved my job, Mr. Jenkins," he breathes, his gratitude palpable in the dimly lit office. Harold waves away the thanks, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "We all need a helping hand sometimes," he responds, returning to his abandoned trash bag. James hesitates before asking, "Why are you still here so late anyway?" Harold's smile dims slightly as he responds, "Mr. Preston wants the conference room spotless for tomorrow's investors. Said he'd check before heading home." Dawn breaks over the city skyline as Harold arrives at Preston Financial hours before the official workday begins. His weathered hands, bearing the roadmap of decades of physical labor, carefully unlock the service entrance. The building stands silent and empty, save for the soft shuffle of his worn work boots across the lobby floor. He makes his way to the small janitor's closet that serves as his base of operations, exchanging his threadbare coat for his uniform jacket. A small framed photograph sits on the metal shelf beside cleaning supplies, a younger Harold with his arm around a smiling woman with kind eyes. He touches the image gently, whispering, "Another day, Margaret?" The morning ritual complete, he wheels his cart toward the executive floor. Outside Preston's office, he notices a delivery person struggling with an enormous flower arrangement. "Let me help you with that," Harold offers, setting aside his mop. Together, they maneuver the lavish display onto the receptionist's desk. The delivery person rushes off without a second glance, but Harold pauses to read the card pinned among the exotic blooms. "Happy anniversary, darling. Dinner at 8, Richard." Harold's eyes drift to the calendar on the wall, where today's date is circled in red with 15th anniversary, written in elegant script. He contemplates the flowers for a moment before continuing to Preston's office, where he notices a small velvet box, half hidden under scattered papers. Opening it reveals a stunning diamond necklace, clearly forgotten in yesterday's rush. Harold carefully places the box prominently on Preston's desk, positioning it so it can't be missed. He polishes the already gleaming surface around it, ensuring the gift will be the first thing his boss sees upon arrival. The mid-morning sun streams through the windows as Harold polishes the brass fixtures in the third-floor restroom. His reflection fragments across the mirrored surfaces, each showing a different angle of his weathered face and silver hair. The door swings open suddenly, revealing Marcus, the building's security guard, clutching his side in obvious pain. "Everything all right?" Harold asks, immediately setting down his cleaning cloth. Marcus shakes his head, face contorted. "Diabetes acting up. Forgot my insulin this morning." Harold helps the larger man to sit on the small bench in the corner. "When did you last eat?" he inquires, his concern evident. Marcus checks his watch through squinted eyes. "Breakfast at 5, blood sugars crashing." Without hesitation, Harold retrieves a small paper bag from his cart. Inside is his own lunch, a carefully wrapped sandwich, an apple, and a small container of orange juice. "The juice first," he instructs, cracking the seal and placing it in Marcus's trembling hands. The security guard drinks gratefully, while Harold unwraps half the sandwich, offering it with quiet insistence. Color gradually returns to Marcus's ashen face as the simple meal does its work. "You need this more than I do," Harold responds to the guard's protests about taking his lunch. "My neighbor always packs too much for me anyway." This isn't true, but the lie comes easily in service of the other man's dignity. As Marcus recovers, he studies the janitor's thin frame with newfound awareness. "Why do you care so much when folks around here treat you like you're invisible?" he finally asks. Harold's eyes carry a profound wisdom as he replies, "Because seeing others clearly is a choice we make regardless of how they see us." The deeply philosophical response hangs in the air between them, revealing depths to the elderly janitor that his humble position had previously obscured. Dark storm clouds gather outside the towering glass windows of Preston Financial as Harold maneuvers his cleaning cart down the executive hallway. The weather matches his darkening mood. Mr. Preston has left 3 increasingly demanding voicemails about preparing the conference room for an emergency board meeting. His arthritic hip throbs with each step, aggravated by the damp weather and his 14-hour shift yesterday. The elevator doors open, revealing Richard Preston himself, his face thunderous. "Jenkins, where have you been? The board members are arriving in 10 minutes." Harold's explanation about cleaning the flood in the basement bathroom dies on his lips as Preston barrels past him. "The conference room is a disaster. Fix it, now!" Harold's pace quickens despite the pain shooting through his leg. Entering the room, his heart sinks. Coffee cups litter the massive table, papers are scattered everywhere, and someone has spilled what appears to be red wine on the cream carpet. An impossible task in 10 minutes. Harold works with desperate efficiency, his nimble fingers belying his age as he clears debris and arranges chairs. Through the glass walls, he sees Preston greeting the first board members in the lobby, pointing impatiently toward the conference room. With seconds to spare, Harold manages to conceal the worst of the stain under a strategic rearrangement of furniture. As executives file in, Preston's eyes narrow at the janitor. "Still here? Make yourself scarce." Harold nods respectfully and wheels his cart toward the exit, but not before overhearing Preston's smooth voice. "As I was saying about cutting operational costs, there's significant waste in our maintenance department." Evening shadows lengthen across the empty office as Harold sits alone in the break room, examining an official envelope with trembling hands. The company letterhead bears the unmistakable signature of Richard Preston at the bottom of the enclosed memo. "Effective immediately, janitorial services will be reduced to cut costs. All maintenance staff over 65 will be offered early retirement packages." The words blur before Harold's tired eyes. At his age, with his limited education, finding another position would be nearly impossible. The modest pension wouldn't cover his apartment rent and medication, let alone food. His calloused thumb traces the edge of the envelope as he considers his options. None of them promising. The break room television drones quietly in the background, a news anchor discussing the rising cost of living for seniors. Harold carefully folds the notice and tucks it into his pocket, his movements deliberately slow, as if already conserving energy for the difficult days ahead. The security camera in the corner captures his defeated posture, his proud shoulders finally bending under the weight of uncertainty. He reaches for the photo of Margaret in his wallet, the one taken at their favorite park bench where they used to feed the pigeons every Sunday. "What would you advise, my dear?" he whispers to the faded image. Rising with effort, he returns to his cleaning cart. Reduced hours or not, the toilets on the second floor still need scrubbing, and Harold Jenkins has never left a job unfinished. The light in his eyes has dimmed, but his resolve remains unbroken. As he pushes his cart toward the elevator, the memo in his pocket feels as heavy as the future it threatens to steal from him. Morning light filters through the blinds as Harold scrubs persistently at the stubborn coffee stain on the boardroom carpet. The cleaning company's budget cuts mean he now works without professional equipment, using homemade solutions of vinegar and baking soda. His back aches from 20 minutes hunched over the spot, but determination keeps his hands moving in rhythmic circles. The sound of approaching footsteps causes him to glance up. Lisa from accounting enters, carrying a stack of financial reports. "Mr. Jenkins, you're here early," she notes, setting down her burden. Harold offers a weary smile, gesturing to the stain. "Mr. Preston's presentation is at 9. This needs to be gone by then." Lisa kneels beside him, her designer skirt touching the floor as she examines his work. "I heard about the cutbacks. It's not right how they're treating you." Harold's weathered hands pause momentarily. "Life rarely gives us what's fair, only what's necessary for growth," he responds, resuming his scrubbing with renewed vigor. The philosophical answer hangs between them as Lisa impulsively reaches for a spare cloth. "Let me help." Harold starts to protest, but sees the determination in her eyes, the same determination he's shown his entire life. Together, they work on the stubborn mark, their efforts finally yielding results. As they admire their handiwork, Preston's voice echoes from the hallway, approaching rapidly. Lisa squeezes Harold's shoulder before hurrying away, leaving him alone to face the CEO. Preston enters, his eyes immediately drawn to the now spotless carpet. His brief nod is the closest thing to approval Harold has received in months. "At least you're good for something," Preston mutters, the backhanded compliment cutting deeper than outright criticism. Harold clutches his cleaning cloth tighter, dignity his only shield against the casual cruelty. Fluorescent lights flicker overhead as Harold stocks the supply closet with toilet paper and hand soap. The company has switched to cheaper products, thin, rough paper and soap that leaves a filmy residue. Another cost-cutting measure that makes his job harder and the employees' comfort less. Harold's phone vibrates in his pocket, a rare occurrence during work hours. The screen shows his landlord's number, sending a wave of anxiety through his tired body. He answers with trepidation, listening silently as the voice on the other end informs him of a rent increase, effective next month. "But the lease agreement," Harold begins, only to be cut off by legal jargon about market adjustments and property taxes. The call ends with a sympathetic but firm reminder that the new rate stands. Harold leans against the shelves, simple arithmetic telling a devastating story. His reduced hours cannot sustain even his modest lifestyle now. Outside the closet, voices approach. Preston and the company's financial officer discussing quarterly projections. "Cut another 15% from maintenance," Preston instructs. Nobody notices the difference anyway. Harold's hand clenches around a bottle of cleaner, knuckles white with restraint. For the first time, anger flashes across his usually serene features, quick and hot before he masters it. He straightens his uniform, tucks away his phone, and steps back into the hallway with practiced invisibility. The executives pass without acknowledging his presence, continuing their conversation about further reductions. Harold watches them disappear around the corner, their expensive shoes clicking on the marble floor he polished at 5 a.m. His resolve wavers momentarily as he considers his dwindling options, each one bleaker than the last. Thunder crashes outside as Harold struggles with the heavy garbage bags, dragging them toward the dumpster behind the building. The company's decision to eliminate the evening shift means he now handles waste disposal alone, regardless of weather. Rain soaks through his thin uniform as he heaves the third bag into the metal container. A flash of white catches his eye, papers scattered by the wind across the parking lot. With a weary sigh, he begins collecting the soggy documents, his sense of duty preventing him from leaving the mess for morning. A partially shredded financial report catches his attention, the bold header still legible. Preston Financial Acquisition Proposal, confidential. Curiosity overcomes his usual discretion as Harold examines the fragments more closely. Numbers jump out at him. Proposed staff reductions, pension eliminations, projected savings from terminating older employees. The document outlines Preston's secret plan to sell the company to a corporate giant, with personal profit highlighted in yellow marker. Harold's hands tremble, not from the cold rain, but from the revelation that the cutbacks aren't about company survival, but about fattening the sale price. A sudden flash of lightning illuminates his stunned expression as pieces fall into place. The emergency board meetings, Preston's sudden interest in operational efficiency, the targeted retirement packages. The truth strikes him with the force of the thunder overhead. Preston stands to gain millions, while dozens of loyal employees will lose everything. The ethical implications weigh heavily on Harold's conscience as he carefully folds the revealing fragments and tucks them into his waterproof wallet. Knowledge brings responsibility, and for the first time in his decades of service, Harold must decide whether following the rules serves the greater good. Morning light slants through Venetian blinds, casting striped shadows across Harold's troubled face as he methodically polishes the executive boardroom table. The fragments of the confidential document seem to burn in his pocket, a moral dilemma he's wrestled with all night. His reflection in the polished mahogany shows new lines of worry etched around his eyes. The sound of arguing voices draws his attention to Preston's office across the hall, where the CEO gestures angrily at Lisa from accounting. "I don't care what the projections show, make the numbers work." Preston's voice carries through the supposedly soundproof walls. Lisa clutches her tablet defensively as she responds. "But sir, these cuts will devastate the pension fund. People are counting on that money for retirement." Preston's dismissive wave cuts through her concern like a knife. "Not my problem after the sale goes through. Just do your job." Harold's polishing cloth stills as he witnesses Lisa's shoulders slump in defeat. She exits Preston's office, nearly colliding with Harold in the hallway. Their eyes meet briefly, hers filled with conflicted loyalty, his with understanding beyond words. "He wants me to falsify financial reports," she whispers, voice barely audible. "I could lose my accounting license." Harold watches her retreat toward her cubicle, the weight of her ethical burden mirroring his own. The discovery in the parking lot suddenly feels heavier, more consequential. Harold resumes his polishing with renewed purpose, his mind working through possibilities and consequences. The simple clarity of right and wrong that has guided his life now faces its greatest test. Amber light from the setting sun bathes the empty office as Harold methodically empties trash bins, his movements automatic after decades of the same routine. His mind, however, races with ethical calculations more complex than any he's faced before. The office landline rings unexpectedly, startling him from his thoughts. After 3 rings, Harold answers tentatively. "Preston Financial Maintenance." The voice on the other end belongs to Marcus, the security guard. "Harold, thank God you're still there. I'm stuck in traffic. Can you let the IT guy into the server room? Preston authorized emergency maintenance." Harold agrees, his trustworthiness never in question despite his low position in the company hierarchy. 20 minutes later, he greets a young technician carrying specialized equipment. "Must be something important to require after-hours work," Harold comments conversationally, leading the way to the server room. The technician nods distractedly. "Mr. Preston wants the system updated before the board reviews the final sale documents tomorrow." This casual confirmation of the impending sale sends a jolt through Harold's system. As he unlocks the server room door, his fingers brush against the document fragments in his pocket. The technician's presence creates an unexpected opportunity, a moment of private access to company systems where the full acquisition proposal might be stored. Harold hesitates at the threshold, conscious of the line between right action and recklessness. The tech gestures impatiently. "I'll need privacy for this work." Harold nods, stepping back. "I'll be cleaning nearby if you need anything." His mind races with possibilities as he pushes his cart down the hallway, the moral compass that has guided his life now spinning without a clear north. Fluorescent lights hum overhead as Harold finishes mopping the break room floor, the clock on the wall showing nearly midnight. Most nights he'd be home by now, but tonight he deliberately stretches his tasks, waiting for the IT technician to leave. Every few minutes he glances toward the server room, conflicted about his next move. The elevator chimes, and Harold tenses, quickly resuming his mopping. The tech emerges, equipment packed away, nodding briefly at Harold before departing. The silent office feels suddenly charged with possibility and danger. Harold sets his mop aside and walks with purpose toward Preston's office, his heart thundering in his chest. Years of cleaning have taught him every security camera's blind spot, every creaking floorboard to avoid. Preston's computer sits dark and dormant on the massive desk. Harold has never used a computer besides the basic time clock system, but his fingers recall the password he's seen Preston enter countless times while Harold dusted nearby, invisible as always to the important man. The screen illuminates with corporate logos, bathing Harold's anxious face in blue light. Simple folder icons populate the screen, and Harold navigates slowly, deliberately, searching for anything related to the acquisition. A folder labeled Meridian Merger Final catches his eye. His weathered finger hovers over the mouse button, the moral implications of his actions weighing heavily. The document opens to reveal hundreds of pages detailing exactly what he feared. Preston's elaborate scheme to gut employee benefits before selling the company, complete with his personal golden parachute worth millions. Harold's hand trembles as he reaches for his phone, the camera app open and ready. Each quiet click of the phone camera feels like a thunderclap in the silent office. Rain patters against the window of a modest diner as Harold stares into his coffee cup, the untouched liquid growing cold. Across from him sits Marcus, the security guard, out of uniform and looking equally troubled. "You took quite a risk," Marcus says quietly, glancing at the phone placed between them on the table. Harold's weathered hands wrap around the mug, seeking warmth that doesn't reach his core. "I've never broken a rule in my life," he admits, his voice barely audible above the ambient diner noise. "But sometimes following unjust rules becomes its own kind of wrong." Marcus nods slowly, decades of his own ethical challenges reflected in his eyes. "My grandfather used to say, the true measure of a person isn't how they act when everyone's watching, but what they do in the dark when no one can see." Harold looks up, something igniting in his tired eyes. Marcus continues, his voice taking on a mentor's certainty. "You've spent your life being invisible to people like Preston. Maybe it's time to be seen." The security guard slides a business card across the table. "Robert Chen, investigative reporter, Financial Times." Harold stares at the embossed lettering, the weight of potential action heavy in the air between them. "Preston's counting on your silence, on you being too afraid to act," Marcus says gently. "Men like him believe people like us don't matter enough to fight back." Harold's fingers close around the card, the simple rectangle representing a crossroads in his moral journey. "Courage isn't the absence of fear," Marcus adds, echoing wisdom from his own life. "It's acting despite it." Harold tucks the card carefully into his wallet, next to Margaret's photo. "What would you do?" he asks simply. Marcus leans forward, his answer changing everything. "I'd remember that sometimes the most powerful act is simply telling the truth, no matter the cost." Sunlight streams through the blinds of a small apartment as Harold sits at his kitchen table, surrounded by newspaper clippings about corporate fraud and whistleblower protections. A notepad filled with his careful handwriting contains points he wants to remember for his meeting. The business card propped against a mug bears the name Robert Chen, investigative reporter. Harold adjusts his only tie, navy blue with thin burgundy stripes, purchased for Margaret's funeral 7 years ago. His reflection in the small mirror shows a man transformed, still humble, still aging, but standing straighter, eyes clearer with purpose. He gathers the printed photos from Preston's computer, along with his own careful notes documenting dates and conversations overheard. Each piece of evidence slides into a manila folder with methodical precision. Harold's phone chimes with a message from Marcus. "Remember, truth is its own armor." The simple encouragement strengthens his resolve as he places Margaret's photo in his pocket, his talisman, his moral compass. The bus ride downtown passes in a blur of rehearsed sentences and second thoughts. Outside the imposing glass building housing the Financial Times, Harold pauses, doubt threatening to overwhelm his courage. An elegant woman exits, holding the door open with unexpected courtesy. "Are you coming in, sir?" she asks. Harold nods, the simple human acknowledgement, being seen, being treated with basic dignity, reaffirming his purpose. In the lobby, he gives his name to the receptionist, his voice steady despite the fluttering in his chest. "I have an appointment with Robert Chen," he says clearly, standing tall despite his humble attire. "It's about Preston Financial." The receptionist picks up her phone, and Harold waits, the manila folder clutched in hands that no longer tremble. Afternoon sun casts long shadows across Preston Financial's lobby as Harold pushes his cleaning cart with renewed purpose. 2 weeks have passed since his meeting with the reporter, and though nothing has visibly changed, Harold moves with subtle confidence, his eyes more observant, his interactions more deliberate. In the elevator, Lisa from accounting offers a tentative smile. "You seem different lately, Mr. Jenkins." Harold returns the smile with genuine warmth. "Perhaps I am." The cryptic response intrigues her, but the elevator doors open before she can inquire further. Harold exits on the executive floor, where Preston's voice echoes down the hallway, unusually agitated. Through the glass walls of the conference room, Harold watches the CEO pace frantically, phone pressed to his ear. "What do you mean, sources close to the company? Who's talking to reporters?" Preston demands, his face flushed with anger. Harold calmly begins dusting the reception area, his back to the unfolding drama, his posture betraying nothing of his inner satisfaction. The company rumor mill has been active all morning. Whispers about financial journalists asking questions, regulatory agencies reviewing documents, potential investors pulling out of meetings. Harold continues his work methodically, pausing only when James, the young intern he helped months ago, approaches with a troubled expression. "Mr. Jenkins, have you seen the Financial Times website?" he whispers, showing his phone screen. The headline reads, "Preston Financial under investigation. Whistleblower alleges fraud in proposed merger." Harold's expression remains carefully neutral as he returns to his dusting. "Sometimes," he replies softly, "the smallest pebble can start the largest avalanche." James studies the older man with newfound respect, a question forming in his eyes that Harold answers with nothing more than a knowing smile before moving on with his cart, his steps lighter than they've been in years. Thunder crashes overhead as Harold shelters in the building's loading dock, watching sheets of rain transform the parking lot into a shimmering mirror. His phone vibrates with an incoming call, Robert Chen from the Financial Times. "It's happening," the reporter says without preamble. "The story breaks in tomorrow's edition. Front page." Harold leans against the concrete wall, emotions warring within him. Vindication, anxiety, a touch of fear. "What about Preston?" he asks, his voice steady despite the turmoil. "He's been called to an emergency board meeting," Chen replies. "Anonymous sources say the board is furious about being kept in the dark." Harold thanks the reporter and ends the call, tucking the phone back into his pocket with trembling fingers. The loading dock door flies open suddenly, revealing Richard Preston himself, his expensive suit disheveled, his face contorted with rage. "You!" he roars, advancing on Harold with fury in every step. "It was you all along!" Harold straightens to his full height, no longer the hunched, invisible janitor. "Mr. Preston," he acknowledges calmly. "I did what conscience required." Preston's laugh is ugly, threatening. "A janitor with a conscience. Do you have any idea what you've done? The board has suspended me pending investigation." Rain soaks Preston's custom-tailored suit as he steps closer, finger jabbing toward Harold's chest. "You think this makes you some kind of hero? When I'm done with you, you'll never work in this city again." The threat hangs in the air between them, but Harold stands unmoved, decades of dignity crystallizing in this moment of confrontation. "Perhaps," he responds quietly, "but I'll still have something you've lost, the ability to look at myself in the mirror each morning." Preston's face contorts with impotent rage as a sleek black car pulls into the loading area. A distinguished older woman emerges, Evelyn Mercer, chairwoman of the board. "Richard," she calls sharply, "the SEC investigators are waiting." Her eyes flick to Harold with curious assessment before returning to Preston. "Now, Richard." Preston backs away, his threatening whisper meant for Harold alone. "This isn't over, old man." As the CEO reluctantly returns to the chairwoman's car, Harold watches silently, the weight of his actions settling fully on his shoulders. The future remains uncertain, but for the first time in years, uncertainty holds no terror for him. Morning light streams through the windows of Preston Financial's lobby, illuminating the unusual scene. Security guards escorting executives in suits from the building, boxes of documents being carried to waiting federal vehicles. Harold moves through the chaos like a ghost, dusting surfaces that don't need dusting, observing the dismantling of Preston's empire with quiet satisfaction. Employees gather in clusters, whispering about the front-page exposé, the rapid stock price drop, the board's emergency actions. Lisa approaches him tentatively, newspaper clutched in her hand. "The whistleblower," she begins carefully, studying his impassive face. "It was you, wasn't it?" Harold offers a small smile, but neither confirms nor denies, his years of practiced discretion not easily abandoned. The article mentioned evidence that could only have come from someone with access to Preston's private files, she continues, Harold's weathered hands still on his cleaning cart. Perhaps someone who was treated as invisible for so long that they became truly unseen, he responds enigmatically. Lisa's eyes widen with understanding. They're saying criminal charges are possible for Preston, that the board had no idea about the pension fund manipulations. Harold nods, expression serious. Actions have consequences, even for powerful men. His phone vibrates in his pocket. Another message from Robert Chen requesting a follow-up interview. Harold declines politely. His role was never about personal recognition. Marcus appears at the security desk, his uniform crisper than usual, his posture straighter. Their eyes meet across the lobby, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The security guard raises his coffee cup in a subtle toast to Harold's courage. For the first time in years, employees throughout the building are noticing the elderly janitor, seeing beyond his uniform to the man himself. Harold continues his rounds, wondering what tomorrow will bring now that the comfortable invisibility of his position has been irrevocably altered. Late afternoon shadows lengthen across the boardroom as Harold polishes the massive table one final time. The official notice arrived this morning. Preston Financial is being restructured under new leadership, and all current contracts, including maintenance services, are under review. His job hangs in limbo, yet Harold works with the same dedication he's always shown. The door opens quietly, revealing Evelyn Mercer, the board chairwoman, her elegant appearance contrasting with the obvious exhaustion in her eyes. "Mr. Jenkins," she acknowledges, surprising him with the use of his name. "I was hoping to find you here." Harold straightens respectfully, wondering if this poised woman has come to personally deliver his termination. Instead, she gestures to the chairs. "May we speak for a moment?" They sit across from each other, an unlikely pair, the powerful executive and the humble janitor. "The board has spent the week reviewing everything," she begins, her voice controlled but kind. "Financial records, personnel files, security footage." Harold's heart races as he realizes the implications. She knows. "What you did required extraordinary courage," she continues, confirming his thoughts. "And at great personal risk." Harold meets her gaze steadily. "It wasn't about courage, ma'am. It was about doing what's right." Evelyn nods, a smile touching her lips. "That's precisely why I'm here. The board is implementing complete restructuring. Richard Preston will face legal consequences for his actions." She pauses, studying Harold's weathered face. "We need people of integrity during this transition. People who understand this company from the ground up." From her briefcase, she retrieves an official envelope. "This is a formal offer. Director of Facilities Management. The position would oversee all maintenance operations with appropriate salary and benefits." Harold stares at the envelope, speechless for perhaps the first time in his life. Evelyn rises gracefully. "Consider it carefully, Mr. Jenkins. We need more people like you, not fewer." She moves toward the door, pausing to add, "The board meeting tomorrow will address the pension fund restoration. Your presence would be valuable." Harold remains seated long after she departs, the envelope heavy with possibilities he'd never dared imagine. Morning sunlight streams through the windows of Preston Financial's newly renovated lobby, where a small crowd has gathered around a podium bearing the company's redesigned logo. Harold stands slightly apart, his worn blue uniform replaced by a modest but well-tailored suit, the transition still feeling strange after decades in maintenance clothes. Evelyn Mercer approaches the microphone, her voice carrying clearly through the atrium. "Today marks a new beginning for our company," she announces. "We're officially rebranding as Meridian Trust, with a renewed commitment to transparency and ethical business practices." Applause ripples through the assembled employees as she continues. Part of that commitment includes recognizing those whose integrity helped expose wrongdoing. Her eyes find Harold in the crowd. Mr. Harold Jenkins demonstrated extraordinary courage by bringing Richard Preston's fraudulent activities to light, risking his livelihood for the greater good. Whispers spread as colleagues turn to look at him with newfound respect. Marcus stands nearby, pride evident in his posture. I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Jenkins as our new Director of Facilities Management, Evelyn continues. His first initiative, reinstating full-time positions for our maintenance staff with comprehensive benefits and fair wages. The announcement brings enthusiastic applause, especially from the maintenance team gathered in the back, their gratitude palpable. Harold steps forward at Evelyn's gesture, his weathered hands steadier than they've been in years as he accepts the microphone. I've spent most of my life being invisible, he begins, his voice quiet but carrying. But I learned something important along the way. Philosopher Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The time is always right to do what is right." Sometimes the most powerful act is simply standing up for what you believe in, regardless of your position or title. His eyes sweep across the faces watching him, some familiar, many new. True dignity isn't found in grand offices or expensive suits. It's found in small acts of kindness, in standing up for others when no one else will, in remembering that every person deserves respect. He gestures to his maintenance team. These are the people who keep this building running, who notice the small details others miss. From now on, they'll be treated with the dignity they deserve. As the crowd erupts in applause, Harold catches sight of a framed photo now hanging in the lobby. Margaret's gentle smile watching over the company's new beginning. "What will you do next?" a voice calls from the crowd. Harold smiles, his eyes bright with purpose. "I'm just getting started." The future stretches before him, unwritten, but full of possibility. Proof that it's never too late to rewrite your story, to stand up for what's right, to become visible after a lifetime in the shadows. Perhaps you too have a moment waiting, a chance to turn the tables when you least expect it. If Harold's journey has touched you, subscribe now to witness more stories of courage and redemption that remind us of our shared humanity. Like this video if you believe in second chances, and comment below with your own experience of standing up for what's right.